All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Ableton Production Techniques. Today is Tuesday, June 21st, and we're gonna look at EQing a stereo drum mix. For a little quick review, we started off talking about the basics, like the frequency sweep technique. We looked at keeping the master spectrum on your master channel and setting it up like this. We talked about what's in the little box with the hertz, there's my monitor up, with reading the frequency and the MIDI note to connect pitch and EQing, such as what you do with EQing your sub bass like we did last week. We also talked about how to use these presets that come with the course, how to EQ your tracks, where you listen to the sound, identify which part of the sound is important. Like, what's the voice of the sound? Is it a hi-hat, a snare? Is it a bass line? Is it a keyboard that's in the mid-range? Is it a vocal? And we talked about how to identify the most important voice or the most important frequency range of your sound, of a specific sound in your track, using the right preset to get started with. And last week we looked at dialing in the presets. After you drop the correct preset, finding out where to cut, where to boost with your individual sounds. Of course, we were cutting in solo, and then you wait to boost until you're listening to the whole mix, because a lot of boosting can add up and can be a little bit too much. So that's should be getting you caught up. We did spectrum, the frequency sweep technique, EQing your sub, EQing your instruments. So today we're gonna EQ a stereo drum mix. And I wanna start off by showing you a bit of the grouping and routing for how I did this. And we got, hey, Shepherds is here, what's happening? If you have any questions, type them in. I'm doing this live and I'm gonna record this for a replay in the course. Quick little mention before we go too deep. This is all part of the course called How to EQ Your Tracks. I dropped the link in the chat, which will replay. It's at courses.mixatexture.com. This is something that you're gonna be doing in every track you make for the rest of your life. So you might as well learn to do it right. And if you happen to miss some of the details in your producer life, what you can do is get them here in this real audio engineering course, where you get not only a set of presets to start with, but you learn how to use them and dial them in for your exact music, which is the important part. You're gonna learn the types of EQ and filter, how to use them, when to use them, why to use them, and how to make your track sound pro. And you don't even have to spend $99 on it. You can get it half price, $49.50, using coupon code EQ2022 right now during the month of June, because I'm teaching this. I want you to learn it. I want you to do it. So that's what you do. Now then, enough of my ads. We're not getting SoundCloud ads today, so I'm gonna do my own ads. And thanks for hanging out watching. Here's the track. This is not mixed very well. We're gonna get it sounding better. To introduce the characters, there's the kick drum and sub. Synth bass, pad sound, melody. We're pretty much ignoring this group today. And there's a big, gnarly, nasty drum group with all kinds of low-end floof. It sounds like, it kind of sounds like garbage. So how did I get to have a drum bus that's got all the drums in the whole track? Let me bypass that whole thing. Well, the first thing I did to make it easy was I color-coded these blue. So I have these three groups coming in. Channel 19, channel 26, channel 29. I'm gonna turn this up to make sure you can really hear what I'm doing. Got some effects on there. This track is called Chatter, which is sort of the interesting extra stuff. And this is called Top Loops, which are kind of like the main thing. So Shepherds, let me know, is this loud enough while I'm soloing these groups? Let me know if you need louder or not. So please type in sound okay or louder, please, so I know what to do. And this is Top Loops is like kind of the main part of like what makes this the genre of, you know, sort of a deep W house track. So with kick drum, you can hear the idea of what I'm going for. And this is what it might sound like when you're making music. If you're kind of a beginner producer and you're at the level of putting together loops, working with drum racks, and you get the parts, then you might have a track that sounds like this that doesn't really snap into focus or feel like it's big and clean and crisp and hitting hard. Oh, Morton's here. Thank you, thank you. Oh my gosh, I have to teach EQing with Mindbender. I don't know if I could do this. So when you have a bunch of sounds, the main goal we're trying to do is identify what sound is a problem and fix it, okay? So to simplify all this, I have everything going into the drum bus channel. That's an audio track set to no input, monitor in. Now I have my sounds organized by type, okay? I'll review this one more time. Group number one, this is an Ableton group. and it's got a mix of audio files and drum racks inside. This one is called top loops because that's like the function. It's like hi-hat and snare and the basic beat, right? This one is called chatter. It's rhythmic, glitchy kind of extra stuff that I want to mix on a different channel, and I want to have control over that volume separately. And then I've got these effects sounds with a clap in there. It kind of sounds like another whole complete beat. And those are going to be like extra layers for kind of later in the track. So I'm thinking almost like song structure right now. When I first drop the beat and introduce the song, like here's the song, this is the only beat we need. Keep it simple, not too much going on at the same time. When we're going into the build up and the main drop, I'm going to add these layers, speed up the rhythm, make it feel faster. So I'm actually thinking of almost when to layer these in the track. So when you hear these two layers, it's going to be halfway through the song. And when you hear this stuff, these are going to be the new sounds that come in part 3 after the main build up and peak, when we get into that bass and drums dub kind of thing. So I got 3 track groups of 3 layers of sounds that I'm going to use at different times in the song. There might be 32 bars when these are all in at the same time, but that's going to be the smaller part of the song, not the main thing of what we're doing. So now we have a problem of nasty sounding drum loops. I'm going to even mute the kick drum and everything and get right in here. And for the last step of routing, I have these individual channels that are kind of a light blue color. You can see they're all going to the group called top loops, and that is assigned to the drum bus. Same thing with the chatter group. These are assigned to chatter group, and you know what helps actually is to put GRP. So now I can see these 2 channels are part of basically a submix, like a subgroup. That subgroup is going to the drum bus, which is over there, and it's also blue. And then finally, my effects hi-hats for part 3. Same thing, these are going to the effects hats group, and that whole group is going over to the drum bus. So I have an easy way to mix these 3 subgroups one by one, and then combine them all at the drum bus, and then finally I can take the level of all the drums on one channel and move it up or down, which really makes mixing a lot easier. So let's get into individual channel EQ. The rules for a subgroup are basically, you want to hear every sound, you want to feel a stereo width, and you need a nice frequency balance. Sheppers, you got to disable the spectrum in EQ8. I'm not quite sure when that comment came in. It was a little bit delayed. So I'll keep going here. Now, there's already too much going on for me to hear individual sounds. So I'm just going to go through these one by one and ask the question, what is this sound doing? Which part is important for the track? And kick in my EQ8. Push, wake up. Here we go. And if you're not sure of what the sound is doing, oh, push is freaking out. What you can do is just put in a high pass filter, roll it up, and listen. And when the part you like is disappearing, you went too far. Now I can hear this little chirp all the way up there. So I know I want the high frequencies. The question is kind of how far down should I bring it? And I think around 500 is okay. And I want to keep this really simple. So I'm only going to look for one place in this sound that could be a problem, which is that chirpy high frequency thing. So I'm going to do the frequency sweep technique. I pick out a parametric EQ, get a medium bandwidth in the Q control, boost and sweep to find out what sounds bad. And then I cut at that frequency to see if it improves the feel of the sound, right? And then I check. Okay, that's all I'm going to do, and let's move on to the next sound. So for this hi-hat on channel 20, I cut out the low frequencies of the middle low area, and I found one ear-piercing kind of chirp and put in a notch EQ, or notch filter. And that is all I want to do with that. Let's minimize that in out and go to the next sound. All right, this looks like a drum rack. and it looks like there's way too much going on in here. We got an EQ set to go. I'm not going to make you watch me do the frequency sweep on every single sound because I don't want to take 3 hours on here, but I'll just identify what is happening. First, we don't want that low kick drum sound in there because we have a separate kick drum in the track. And maybe I'll go through these bands one by one and kind of like identify what we're doing. So band 2. Cutting out that resonant. Band 3, 563 hertz. Let me know if you can hear that at 563. Can you type in 563 if you hear that so I can understand if you're getting the clarity on there? We've got a 2.3 lift right here. And right away, that helps me bring up the snare area. But not too much. We're going to just do a little bit of a gentle lift there, helping me understand, okay, this sound is about the snare drum and the hi-hat and things. Now, important step, compare your two sounds and make sure you can still hear what's happening. Oh my God. That sounds awful. I'm glad I titled this track Paper Snare because this sounds like freaking dog poo. And look at that spectrum. That's like, I don't know. I would give this to Shepherds and say, please distort this whole thing and make it into techno. But for a snappy house track, we do not want that kind of sound. So clearly, cutting off the low frequencies is making a huge difference. And I can see that I EQ'd this a while ago because I'm boosting on a couple of snare drum channels, and my technique has evolved a bit. So I'm going to undo this snare drum lift, and I'm going to leave my boosting EQ to the group channel when I get there. So now we've got the paper snare drum going through here. Shepherds, you want the stems, right? And let's check our mix. And this is where I start mixing. As soon as I cut out part of the sound, the volume coming through the track is going to change. So I just want to pull it up enough to hear what the sound is and add a new one. And that sounds like a top loop, right? Again, yeah, that's a lot going on in there. And there's a little sound in there that I don't love. Come on. So I want to explore the middle highs. My USB interface is freaking out while I'm streaming, so push is not as responsive as I would like. Maybe I'll just EQ like this. Okay, I'm not doing band 4. So band 7. Narrow the Q a little bit. Boost up the frequency. I'm looking for this little resonance that's like this. And there we go. Seems there's a big lag delay on the comments. Yeah, it could be like 45 seconds sometimes, or a bunch. Now let's bring in our other parts of the group. Now we're getting into a situation where I'm already kind of getting confused about which snare and hi-hat I'm hearing. So the solution to that, I'd do with pan position. When I have a lot of sounds layered in the same frequency range, to get a thick drum mix, you can use layering and put similar sounds in the same function, like multiple claps, multiple snares, multiple hi-hats, and then pan them so they're not having frequency competition. Then you can have a center one that's nice and loud, the ones on the side that are serving the same kind of function on the backbeat. And we're beginning to make a pretty cool sounding mix. Here's a little triangle. Sometimes I use auto filter as well as EQ8. If you only need to cut off the low frequency of a sound and you can just hear that that's all you need to do, you can just grab an auto filter, set it in high pass mode. And honestly, I don't think I need to EQ very much more of that sound. And that's a little audio file. Sometimes it might be fun to see, I had a gate on there. I think I might do my little transient trick on here. You know what? No, in this case, gate actually works better than the transient trick. And now let's fade this into our mix. So there's our drum mix coming together. Just a little bit of triangle. We don't want to turn this into Kenny G smooth jazz. And last up, a little bit of hand percussion. Again, this has a gate on it. Can be a little bit too much of the rattly stuff. And all I really want to do here is cut off some of those lows. And I want to make the gate a little bit smoother. Technically, the gate qualifies as dynamics control, not EQing, but I'm thinking of like, with this tambourine sound, how much is this participating in the frequency range? And how much do we hear it, right? So I'll just make it like that, a little bit more subtle. And now let's check our drum mix. Matt Schultz, the zaps are loud. And now let's look at the reason the triangle and the tambourine, pandero, are over here is that they're both kind of up there in that jingly frequency range, which means I'm going to pan them left and right to spread them apart and get them away from the hi-hats. And that set a little buzz sound. The zaps, right? And you can see within my drum rack, even, these hi-hats are panned left, right, and right. So now let's open up all of our snare drums and ask the question, did that help? I know for one thing, we cleaned out a lot of the low-end crud that was in the way. Let's check with the kick drum here. So now with the kick drum and a sub bass and this drum mix, we're getting somewhere. And we still have some space to EQ on here. So let me kick in the auto filter. And I would love it if that starts working. Now we're EQing the whole top loop mix. So if there's a place I want to boost, I'm going to do it here in this group. And if there's something I want to cut, I'm also going to do that and be able to cut all the sounds together. I'm going to put this up to about 130 right there. And let's just check out what we can do with EQ on here. Matt Schultz, with that tambourine, I would send it into a reverb, set the reverb to high frequency response, and then gate before it. Yeah. That's a great recommendation for reverbs and how to work with those. Cool. Thank you for telling me the zaps were loud. You're totally right about that. Now we're at 275, listening to the drum mix. Okay, so in the lower mids, it sounds kind of crappy, and in the upper mids, it sounds good when I boost. Frequency sweep technique, parametric EQ, boost it up, sweep around to look for something nasty. Do you hear that 394? I do not want that in my mix, so I'm going to dump out a ton of that. And let's move on to band 4. I heard something else around the 600 area. And when you're doing frequency sweep, you know, you'll see some people recommend doing it like a super tight, very narrow Q. That's going to make almost every frequency sound bad. Might be good for a special effect, but it's not as realistic. I like to boost with a wider Q. And look for those kind of extra spots, right? Kook, kook, kook. Tell me if you hear 685. Put in like a 685 yes or 685 no. And the thing about subtractive EQ is that when you get rid of it, you just get more of what you want. It's literally like peeling a piece of fruit and putting it in a fruit salad. Peeling a cucumber, peeling an apple, a peach. You just get the really juicy part that you want, and all the leaves and seeds and stems and crap is like, you just don't bring that to the salad. So we got 2 EQ cuts in here. Let's see if we can tighten up some of that high end a little bit. Morton said you got a very nice groove. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that, because this, you know, it's okay to have a little fun while we're making music, even in a technical topic like EQing. So now what I'm doing with band 5 is I'm going with a really wide Q. I'm just gonna lift a little bit and listen to what sounds good. High frequencies sound good with a boost. Here around 2K is that snare drum and clap area. So let's go with just a little boost. And for everybody who's maybe in the beginning stages of your producer life, and I'm talking to everybody who might be watching on replay, because I know you guys who are with me right now probably know this stuff, but if you haven't spent a ton of time with EQing in the studio, for just an idea of how much is too much, I've talked to mastering engineers who talk about 1/4 of a dB, and they can hear the difference. And if you talk about a whole dB of cut or boost, they're like, oh my God, a dB is so much. So when you're in EQ8 and you're jacking, 15 dB or 4 dB, that's a lot. That's like taking the salt container, opening off the lid, and dumping the whole thing of salt on your food. So if you're new to this, as an exercise, work with like 3 dB less, like within the range of 3 dB plus or minus. Train your ears to hear what's happening with only a 3 dB cut or boost, and that'll make you better at identifying what's going on. And don't go like, oh, I like that snare drum, and jack it up to like plus 10. You can do that for the frequency sweep when you're finding places to cut and boost, but for boosting, keep it subtle and wait till you really get some other ears on the track, like in track feedback, to make a decision about how much is too much. Now, just for the rest of the signal chain here, we got a little bit of compression, and for fun, I put this on, which, like in a build-up section, I've got that available as kind of a performance effect. And if you're into this kind of sound, little 8%, 9% wet, can give you a little bit of a shuffle on that groove. Free range, 125 millisecond. Shepherds, cuts and dips can be big in sound design, but should be getting less the more you get to the final mix pre-master. That is such a good comment. I totally agree. Sound design is all about taking something and changing it into something else creatively. And you can do huge amounts of mangling sounds with EQ, with filter, with resonant boosts. Auto filter has a really cool thing where if you put the resonance up to 125%, it'll self-oscillate and make a whole new instrument that goes like, so yeah, totally. Sound design, you can use extreme settings, and we assume you're aware of your volume in your room. The closer you get to the mastering session, the smaller your adjustments should be. So we're in the technical mixing phase of this project, which means I don't want to be having huge changes. That was a really good comment. Okay, let's move on to our next group. We have this top loop section pretty nicely in tune. Here's what I'm going to do. I mapped all my EQ controls to one knob, which looks like this. You see the key Z? I went through and like literally put all my EQs and filters on the Z key so that as we go through each sound, I can do an A-B comparison. Let me just make sure and check what we're listening to, because I always want to know what we're listening to. On, off, body snare, on, off, hi-hat rack, on, off, and one more, top loops, on, off. Okay, good. Now, we're going to listen to this drum mix and do an A-B comparison of before and after EQ to decide if this sounds good. That's with all the EQs off, master channel spectrum, and EQ on. You know what's funny? The triangle sounds the same. And now I'm going to drop the kick drum in and hear that same thing. That's EQ in and bypass. Let me know if you can hear the difference. EQ in, bypass. When the EQ is bypassed, it makes the kick drum sound like garbage. Did you notice that? The kick drum sounded like boof, boof. Just this floppy, nasty thing, almost like not as bad as a blown speaker, but not good. And then when we kick in the EQ, everything got more clear. Out, in. Okay, so we're basically done EQing the top loops system, which means we have a stereo subgroup right here at top loops. Every sound in there, we did a couple things. Number one, we cut out the low frequencies. Number two, we listened in detail to knock out any resonances that were too much in that sound. Number three, we identified pairs of sounds that were in a similar frequency range, and we split them, or we panned them left and right to clear up frequency space so they're sharing the space for thickening the stereo drum group. And then finally, we did some minor volume adjustments, listening to one sound, adding in another one, And the rules for your subgroups, for me, when I'm mixing drums, the subgroup rules are, number one, I want to hear every sound that's in there. Number two, I want to feel a stereo spread, so it's clearly there's stuff that's spread out. And then number three, I want the overall frequency range to be balanced so that you don't have any one sound like too much, or anything like too much on the bass. And actually, those rules apply to any instrument subgroup and your final mix. What is good music? You hear everything that's in there. There's a great stereo field, and the frequency range is balanced with nothing too much. You don't have too much of any one sound. So those are the basic rules for mixing, and you can apply them at the subgroup level to identify your stereo sounds and the elements and stuff. So chatter group, let's see what we got going on in here. Let's mute 19, unmute 26. Okay. I think I left the EQs in on here, right? Okay, those are off. I mean, I left the EQs dialed. And you can hear that these are very similar sounds. So right away, I know I'm spreading these apart. Ooh, a little pitch drift on there. Get Scott Burke. And what is this EQ doing? Oh, Mindbender, blown speaker like it's a bad thing. That's the sound I'm aiming for. I know what you mean. That's a heavy, heavy sound. Pro level mastering only. This sound is cool. You could... I would listen to just this by itself, right? But considering that we have a track with a whole bunch of other percussion, we're going to cut out the low frequency. And on this sound, it's kind of a sacrifice. Like, I don't really want to cut I like that whole sound, and that's okay. It's okay to have a sound where the whole frequency range is good, and then you compromise and you ask yourself, well, I can only fit part of this sound into the track along with all the other hi-hats and snares and claps. So which is the most important voice in this sound? Which frequency range do I really, really need to keep in order to communicate the important part of this sound? So it's kind of weird I put the high-pass filter on band 8. Oh, and that's automate. Yeah, okay. So I'll just bypass this one in and out. It's part of... I want to keep this simple and not get too much into device racks and things. Shepherd's use the pitch hack on that or make it a drone maybe, yeah. So I can cut out a good amount of lows out of this sound and still have kind of a nice ticky kind of sound. And another question, why am I boosting in this sound? Let's select a boosted channel over here. Something like that. And it's a pretty simple sound. If you have good quality sounds, you don't need to do a lot of correction in the mix. You might just need to, like I was saying, decide which frequency range that sound is really speaking, kind of help it stand out in that range, and that could be enough. All right, this one is more ticky and more high frequency. Shepherds, the more I listen to this, the more I want those stems. Maybe I'll make a project pack with this one. And it looks like the EQ is pretty similar in here. I'm gonna go for band 3. Try and figure out why did Steve boost up band 3. This is a track from my production archives that I noticed a couple things I would do differently right now. So maybe not such a big boost on band 3. And in order for this sound to make sense, let's get these both together. Now we're on track 28. And I do like that little bit of a lift in the higher frequencies. And these are working in a pair. It's like this one's on the right, this one's on the left. And they're not happening at exactly the same time. So we're getting some stereo motion. Your attention's over here, and then it's over there, which I think is super fun. These sound good right there with just the kick drum and bass line, right? Chatter group does not have anything on it. Honestly, the only thing I'm hearing that is really a need right now is some compression. And I'm getting the spinny ball. Yay. Maybe I'll get it from over here. And I'm just going to drop a basic compressor on there. And those are pretty dynamic sounds, meaning there's loud parts and there's some little quiet stuff in there. So we're on channel 26. Come on, pushy. And for a quick little drum thing, go around 4 to 1. This is my compression template, so it's all kind of set up like that. Decently long attack. Control some of those peaks and bring it up a bit. Okay, and we'll leave that. Now what we want to do is, of course, check our first drum group. That sounds like somebody hit the bypass switch. All right, that's going to be enough of the Z key. Ugh. Those EQs are in. And yeah. Now that we have our kick drum and our channel 19 stereo drums in, let's fade up the chatter group and see if we can feel that stereo motion and ticky-ticky thing happening. Matt Schultz doesn't like the compression. Yeah, I could agree with you on that. And now I'm fading this up, and the question I'm asking is, did my EQ edits help? Can I hear all the sounds? Do I hear everything in the frequency range? And does it sound balanced? So basically now the rules of the submix, I'm listening to the drum bus. And at the drum bus level, with all these blue groups coming in there, now in the drum bus, do I hear all the groups that are coming in? So do I hear 19 and 26 both as individual groups? And you know what's cool is, if your subgroups have a balanced frequency range and a stereo spread, your main bus is going to have a good stereo spread. The frequency range might need a little bit of work, but basically, if you take care of stereo at your subgroup level, when you get to everything in one big stereo container, the stereo width is going to stay there and just still be cool, which I think is super fun. And I can clearly identify that chatter thing. That triangle is showing up a little too much in the mix. So now here's the thing. If I have a sound that's a good quality sound, do I need to go and EQ it to get rid of part of it? No, I don't. What I can do is pull this down, and by changing the volume, it's like having a wide range, a full band of EQ cut. It's like a little mental trick, but if you got a good quality sound, you don't have to EQ out the ting part, like, I don't have to try and find that and EQ the triangle. I can just bring it down, keep it in the background as a subtle little sound. Oh, Mindbender, put some phaser on drum bus 1 and the groove can go on forever. That's a good idea. Okay. Now let's see if we can get into this effects group before it turns into nighttime. Oh my God. What the hell was I doing? All right, we need some heavy surgery on here. I'm gonna reset the pan position, mute these layers one by one, and it's like having a room full of dogs. You got to get them one at a time, or else you're gonna be in trouble. This channel is called high frequency hi-hat. Clearly, it's the high part that I want. So I did a high shelf lift on here, and in my low frequencies, I just wanted to identify. We do not want that in the mix. So I'm just rolling up a high pass filter, looking for the interesting part of the sound, which is really. So up top is like the crinkly. And then in the mids, we get another bit of a clap kind of layer. And we have a lot of claps happening in the top loop group. So I think I'm going to aim this a little bit higher. I don't really need to add another snare drum in here. I mostly just want the high frequencies. And if I have band 1 cutting out a bit more of the mids, I don't even need to boost the highs. All I do is just isolate them as the main part of the sound, and I can use the volume control. And now this volume is basically like a high shelf boost, because it's the high shelf is the only thing we're hearing. That loop is not trimmed either. You hear that zoop at the end of the sound. Is there a gate on here? No. Okay. Clip volume, clip gain. That. Oh, it's that whole sound. Okay. And I hate these breakpoints. All right, I can see what that's doing rhythmically. Same kind of thing as the sound on channel 30. And if these are in kind of the same high frequency range, we're going to go for some nice stereo spread and move on to the next sound, middle sweep. Aha, these are making a phrase. This fits in the middle. And then it's going to be 33. So these whole thing make a group. 1, 2, 2, and this one. Super compressed. Cut out the lows. Super mid-rangey because I wanted to just pop through once in a while. This one has a long reverb tail. And those are making like extra kind of clap effects. Was that bandpass filter moving? Aha, I've got an LFO on the bandpass filter to give some motion to this channel 32 clap thing. That's interesting. So these are made to be like kind of interlocking sounds that fit on top of the main beat. We've got them basically EQ'd. I can hear each sound in the effects hats group, but I'm not really sure how these are going to work with the main beat. So let's take this down, put our beat together the way it's going to sound like music. Mindbender, yeah, that's the channel for the phaser. I think you're right about that. All right, now let's settle into the group, right? We're like listening to music, kick drum, bass line, hi-hats. This is a track, right? This is playable, like. So now let's bring in our effects hi-hats. And this really does sound like an outro to me. These are like the little sounds at the ending of the mix, like we're in the mix out section. It's just another little extra rhythmic percussion thing, kind of for fun, to take us from the end of the track out to the mix out. some vocals on top of this and it'll be done. I'll sing some vocals right now. DJ Waters! DJ Waters! All right, so there we go. It's 12:45. I've been through EQ and a bunch of channels and groups. And this is starting to sound like it could be music. And even here at the drum bus, I think, there's possibly a space to EQ the whole thing now that we have 3 groups coming in. So what are the rules we're looking for in a stereo drum mix? We want to hear each group. All right, so I'm going to listen to the drum bus and treat this as the subject of my next experiment. And we're going to do a little bit of bus processing, basically. So I want to ask the questions, do I hear every group coming into this bus? And can I hear the stereo width? And then do I have any frequency problems that are stacking up? Because we have every one of these groups sounding pretty good, 19, 26, and 29. Each one of those by themselves sounded okay, but when they combine, and now we're listening to 36, maybe some of those highs are overlapping and getting a little too, you know what I mean? So we're going to go to the drum bus, do a little bit more of the frequency sweep technique, and then possibly put on bus compression and call it a day. And I like to keep these workshops down to half to an hour so that it's actually usable for people watching the replay who want to learn this stuff and do it. So here we are. I have the EQ8 on track 36, the drum bus. We have all 3 of our groups activated. The mix is basically okay. So let's hop in around 275 hertz. And this is an EQ preset that I have these frequencies kind of ready already. We're going to boost up. And EQs always sound best when they're moving around. So every time I do the frequency sweep, I always think of like, oh, I want to do that in the track for like a performance effect. It's funny how often 160 is the culprit. Go to the next band, flip it on. Interestingly enough, what's 160 times 2? 320. Little octave EQ. And I'm doing this kind of quick and dirty with headphones on, so, in your monitors, in your room, when you're not talking and live streaming, you might spend a little more time on your drum stereo bus. A little more time than I am, but I want to just show you basically some of the frequencies I'm looking for. And maybe we don't need to scoop out minus 10 dB. Okay, and do we need a shelf at all? What's up there in the air band, as they call it? That's too extreme. Just a bit. Just a bit. And it's a lot of EQs everywhere. I know there's a ton of EQ on here. There could be a debate about which type of EQ you're using and whether or not you create phase problems with all kinds of overlapping EQ. I know there's a lot of audiophile questions you can get into when you're doing EQing, but for just the general theory of what do you cut, what do you boost, and why, and what are you listening for, I'm trying to show you all some maneuvers you can use that are going to generally work. And then as you get your skills up and your listening environment up and your monitor quality up, then you can start thinking about, do I need linear phase EQing, or should I do my low end with high pass filters or shelf EQs or what? Because you can definitely create problems for yourself by doing too much EQ. Also, come on. My push knobs are really slow. The screen is like not updating, even though the knobs are moving. I think it's gonna be time for a new machine soon. There we go, thank you. And some of my default compression for a bus group for drums would be long attack, auto release, 2-to-1. Just get some compression showing up. Not a lot of gain reduction. And a bit of makeup gain. Yeah, my Ableton is quite busy. I know there's a lot. I built this session a little while ago when I was using a lot of different Sound Toys plugins and things. So I got to go through, render some stems, strip it down. Do I use the CPU metering within Ableton? No. That's a good idea. So I want to wrap it up for today. There's so many topics we could get into about how to really make your sound excellent. There's a lot of things spinning off in the world of audio engineering. But for today, for a basic review of what we did to EQ our drum mix, we started off with master spectrum on the main stereo left-right channel, with, of course, a little key mapped onto the device title bar so that you can easily pull it up and check your frequencies at different moments in your mix project. Then we separated our sounds into subgroups. And if you didn't catch that at the very beginning, the reason I put these in groups in the beginning was to identify types of sounds. So top loops are basically the main drum beat with hi-hats and snare drums and claps. If I had to make a whole track with just this group, I could do it. So this is like my dominant group that I want to be able to take this whole group up and down easily with one fader to match everything else going on in the track. The second group is some clicky effects that sound cool. And they're enough to hold the beat for a while, but I'm going to basically use track 26 as a second layer. So like after the beat, after like 2 minutes into the track and you're starting to get a little familiar with the beat, then we pull in a layer 26 and add some extras to take it to another rhythmic direction. And then on group 29, these are the effects things for the third part of the song when I want to have some new rhythmic layers and I want to add to the beat that's already there. And you can hear these are not really enough to hold a beat by itself. Maybe for the outro it could be okay, but this sounds like extra pieces of beats that are not really the full part of the track. And I did that on purpose because these are the extra spices that I'm going to add on top of the main beat. And when you put them together, you should have a nice wide stereo field, an overall balanced tonal range, so nothing is poking out, sounding too gross or too loud. And you should be able to identify every element that you put in there. Because you did the sound design, you did the drum programming, you made the sounds, you should be able to hear them. So don't let your mix get overcrowded, busy, mono, phase problems, and all kinds of nasty stuff. And finally, we brought them all together into the drum bus. Did a little bit of cut, a little bit of boost, a little bit of compression, and this is on the way to being a cool track. So thanks a lot for watching. If this is something you want to learn more about, please come on over to courses.mixatexture.com, where I'm putting up Ableton tutorials where you learn by doing it inside Live. That means some of these courses have live packs that you download to open up a project and do the stuff that you see me doing on video. This one today is called How to EQ Your Tracks, and you learn about the different kinds of EQ, the audio engineering theory of the frequency range and our ears and our feelings. So you learn how to use EQ to make your tracks feel right. That's really what we're doing. We're literally getting into the numbers of your EQ frequencies and identifying them to feelings people feel. It really works that way. It's like magical music. And you learn about that in there. You get a pack of presets to drop in on all the different sounds. Let me show you what these presets look like in here. In my audio effects section, in my EQs and filters, EQ 8. These are the actual presets you get in the course. Bassline, high, mid, sub, drums for beat loops, hi-hats, kicks, snares, keyboards, synths, leads, melody, mid-range, even male and female vocals. And again, these presets are a starting point that you drop on the sound to identify the voice of that sound, where it's speaking in the music, And then you go through with the frequency sweep technique to customize the preset to work with that sound. They're designed to save you time and help you learn. They're not a final resting place for your frequencies. So don't come at me with the debate about presets. Now, normally this course goes for $99, which is absolutely worth this. That's cheap for what you're getting. As a matter of fact, some of the stuff in this course, the PDF documents, a friend of mine has been using them to teach with at the university level, like a 20-page PDF document. He was teaching in a college course for like $3,000 a semester. You can get this whole course for $99 normally, but since it is the month of June and I'm doing the Ableton production series focusing on EQ, what you do is type in the coupon code EQ2022, which I put in the chat notes at the very top with the link. You can drop the price down to $49, which is an amazing deal for what you're going to learn in this course about how to make your tracks sound better using the techniques I just showed you in my session today on your drums, on your instruments, on your kick drum, on your sub bass, even your vocal groups, even your reverbs and auxes to get them all coming in together. And I had these muted for the workshop. So you guys, I guess I got some fans of the drums on here. We could export some stems and pop them up on Discord. What are you guys talking about? I missed a little comment back there. Matt Schultz. Apart from the sound design phase, where I'm quite radical with EQ, I tend to use them very sparingly. I like designing the sounds in a way that they're already almost there. Yes, and Shepard's dub delay. I agree. If you get your sound design in place and you have high quality sounds, your mix is easier and easier. The more you think about your frequency range from the beginning of production sound design programming sequencing, the more you think about your frequency range, the more your mix is going to be easy to work with. And when I'm composing, I'm thinking, all right, I want a kick drum and a sub bass. I probably want a bass line. I almost think about what sound can I put in each frequency range so the mix stacks up with some instrument in each band. And once you have that, you almost don't even need to EQ if you're playing a melody that fits the right notes in the frequency range where you have some space. So that's what I do. Maybe another way to say that is like, if you're producing a track and you know you have a female vocalist coming in, don't fill up the high mid-range with a really busy melody, because then the voice is going to have nowhere to go. You know what I mean? You got to plan it out like strategically in your mind. Shepard's, that's a time saver. Pivclip, make a track of it. It sounds good. Thank you. You know, this could be going out on the house compilation, but I'm not going to promote that. We got Techno Volume 1 coming out on Friday. I'm super excited. And everybody, thank you so much for helping me out with the graphics, the video, the feedback, the mastering from Pivclip, the track sequencing, the logo graphics, all that stuff is finally coming together. I'm so happy. Our track feedback crew is the jam. And I'm going to wrap it up right now at 12:59. This could be exactly 1 hour. And y'all, I'll see you tomorrow for track feedback. Same time, same place. Thank you so much for watching.